Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Sue Stiles, and today I'm really pleased to bring to you Tina Varughese. She is the best professional speaker on the subject of diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias. In fact, one of her keynotes is titled 50 Shades Beige. She was also named one of Canada's top 10 notable speakers, and I know you're going to really enjoy how she speaks about this topic today. She was also the face of diversity, literally, having been chosen to participate in Dove's campaign for real beauty, representing beauty in diversity. So, yes, we have a real Dove model here for everybody. Welcome to the podcast, Tina Varughese. It's really nice to have you here.
It's awesome to be with you today, Sue.
So this is a big topic. Maybe you can just start us off. Like, what is bias? What are the things that you have expertise in that you share all across the world, really?
So, unconscious bias is learned behavior, attitude, beliefs that ultimately sit in our unconscious state. And where we hold bias, the key areas that we hold bias are gender, race, religion, sexual orientation, age, weight, and disability, both physical and emotional. Now, with that being said, we have well over 170 statistically proven unconscious biases that we can have against others. I tend to focus on the key seven at the workplace. Interesting to note, all of those biases that I listed, we've made great strides in over the last 20 years. That means we have a lot of work to do, but there's been some strides. There's been some movement, except in one area, and that's weight bias. We haven't made any movement in that space. We still hold a lot of bias, conscious or unconscious, against people that tend to be overweight. So that would be just some interesting information.
That is so interesting. And I know things have changed for sure. And especially over the last couple of years, so many things have come to the forefront. And it is something that maybe real estate students and students who are people who are thinking of becoming entrepreneurs, they might not get this formally at their corporate head office. And so I really wanted to have you on to just cover this topic as someone is starting to branch out in a new career and are going to be dealing with all kinds of people, different people every day.
That's right. Especially in a referral industry, you really want to manage and mitigate and interrupt those potential unconscious biases you have. Because, at the end of the day, having unconscious bias doesn't mean you're racist or discriminatory. It means you're human, but we can all become better humans.
Yeah, that's good to know. That's good to hear. Yeah, we're not here to come down on anyone, but we're here to help you so that you can avoid, any embarrassing moments. And maybe a lot of it comes down to communication. And I know you talk a lot about that communication. So maybe you could just maybe expand on some communication styles, some different styles that get people into trouble.
Yeah, there are lots of different communication styles, and we don't tend to recognize that we too have a communication style in Canada. But if we were to travel abroad, or when we meet people from other cultures, new Canadians, even other realtors, there's many culturally diverse realtors out there. Well, they may have a speaking style that's different than your own, but because we don't understand there's a difference, then, we have those misjudgments or miscommunication, or, even we might be offended, when in essence it might be a style. So one key style is direct versus indirect communicators. And you will definitely come across direct and indirect communicators as realtors. So direct communicators tend to be, as you can imagine, much more direct in their communication style. They use less words, less nonverbal. So people coming from the US, the UK, Germany, the Netherlands, Eastern Europe tend to be more direct in their communication style. Now, unfortunately, sometimes without having that knowledge, without having that awareness, well, we're going to assume maybe that person is rude or abrasive. And the issue is, our impressions are made in seconds, and it goes both ways. And so if we have a potential client that we're finding is rude or abrasive, or a realtor that is rude or abrasive, well, what's that going to do to our customer service? It's probably going to go down. Now, our indirect communicators are people that use a lot less communication. They'll use a lot more nonverbals, so not using words, but using maybe tone, intonation, speed of delivery when it comes to communicating, more gestures, whatever it might be. So one story that I like to tell when I'm keynoting or doing a workshop is a story about a man and a woman wanting to potentially get married, yet they live in Indonesia. And basically, the moms and the kids meet in Indonesia, and they meet at a house for tea. Now, with that tea, well, tea with bananas were served. And when the boy comes home with his mom, he says, "Do I have an opportunity to marry this lovely girl?" And the mom says, "Absolutely not." And we know how influential mothers can be, and that's across the world. It doesn't matter where you're coming from. We all know how influential moms can be. But what's interesting about the story is that no words were actually exchanged about the boy and the girl. So what happened? Well, tea would normally be served with cake, with cookies, with something sweet. And the mom serving the tea with the bananas, well, this was just her way of saying, tea served with bananas is an unnatural pairing. And ultimately, you, the boy and the girl, are an unnatural pairing, and therefore I'm not giving my blessing. So no words were exchanged, but the message became crystal clear. Now, in Canada, we tend to fall, believe it or not, I always poll the audience and I'm like, well, do you think we fall indirectly or do we fall directly? Like, where are we in that scale? And we actually are right in the middle. We're indirectly direct. Or directly indirect. And I'm like, well, we can't even pick a stance there. But if you think about it, it really does make sense because we are a country of immigrants. We are influenced by so many different speaking styles that it would make sense that the people that you meet, well, some are going to come out farther on the direct scale and some are going to come out farther on the indirect scale. And so that's why we just need to be, we have two ears, one mouth for a reason. And I think it's really important to listen twice, speak once, and be much more aware of not just what words are being said, but tone and intonation and food that's served, or food that's where you're kind of going, well, this is different, this isn't what I'm used to. Well, there's a reason. And so just being a bit more attuned in a way that we haven't been attuned before.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Being aware and tuned in as we weren't before. And it brings to mind, I sat on a board once and myself and the president, we just used to talk and talk, obviously very directly. We just wanted to say what we wanted to say. And one day, the, whatever her role was, she said to us, when you two are talking, I feel left out. I can't get a word in edgewise. And you're just so, so in the throes of it. I don't have a chance.
Well,
We never, like our intention was not that at all. But that
we're
was my first encounter just to thinking, oh, it's not all about what I'm trying to say. I mean, if you're in negotiations and you've got two direct people and someone who's quieter, they might end up feeling like they're not being listened to, even if that wasn't the intention.
Exactly. It does come down to intention and impact. Our intention might be positive, our impact might be negative, and we may not even know it. But we will know it when we don't get that sale or that referral the next time. So that's why we really need to change the way. And I think for a lot of people, if we have successful businesses, we don't change. We just do things the way we've always done, if that be the same as 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But the world is changing. And if we don't innovate and continue to learn and relearn, we're not going to grow our businesses at all. And we're not going to make those, I think, conscious connections that is just so important in relationship building, which is in essence, I don't think you're in the business of selling homes. I think you're in the business of relationship building. And so that's why this is so imperative.
Yeah, that's totally true. And you said something very quickly there that I would just ask you to just say again about sometimes our intention is not how we impact people. Can you
Right.
just
So
speak to that again? I think that's big.
yeah, and so it comes down to intention and impact. So for example, are you familiar, Sue, with what a microaggression is?
No.
So a microaggression, and you might actually know what it is, but you don't know the terminology. So microaggressions are everyday hostilities towards marginalized groups. Now, I personally find in the DEI space, diversity, equity, and inclusion, sometimes those definitions kind of go like this. So I like to give more practical, tactical examples. So, a question that I have received in my lifetime and many, many times over is, well, Tina, where are you from? And I will answer Saskatoon, Saskatchewan originally, go Riders, woohoo, right? And people will go, huh, okay, but where are you really from? So in that moment, and kind of how you evaded when that president was talking to you and felt like, well, they didn't feel they belonged. Well, that's how a microaggression like that one can come across to people that are BIPOC. I fall under the BIPOC category, Black, Indigenous, people of color, people with accents, are unconsciously, when we say, where are you from? Well, the intention might be positive. You might be coming from a place of interest, but recognize that a lot of people that are BIPOC or those with accents have heard that question so many times that it kind of comes down to they don't feel like they don't belong, or that they're less Canadian than you are, or that they feel like you're singling them out. Now, the intention and impact is where this is key, because the intention of your question might actually have been coming from a place of curious compassion. But if that is your intention and you're in the business of relationship building, then make sure that you share a little bit about where you potentially came from. And the better, more inclusive question, after you've established a bit more of a relationship of trust, is, what is your cultural background? Because if you were to ask me, Tina, what is your cultural background? Well, I'd say, my parents came from India well over 65 years ago, but then immigrated to Canada and actually made their home in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. I moved to Calgary in the 1990s. Well, now you have all these talking points, that you have to start creating a conversation. But I always say, if you're going to ask that question, make sure that you're also answering the question as well, because a relationship is not one way, a relationship is two way.
Oh, that's just so good. I hope everyone out there is hearing this like I am. I mean, we don't hear this every day on the media, or so much on the radio. So I think it's just really good to think about. And in this category, if you're local, I mean, real estate is a local business. And so when you work with somebody from another country, I mean, we've got people from Ukraine coming in, as well as, we're open for all countries, all immigrants, we say. So say you're Canadian born, your heritage is Canadian, and you are trying to build relationships with other cultures, and you coming from a place of compassion and want to be seen like that. What other kinds of things can you do when you're working with people coming in who might be feeling new and maybe are uncomfortable with that?
Right. Well, so first of all, I'm going to back you up a little bit, because you kind of mentioned that real estate is a local business. And what I think is really important for new realtors in general to understand is, yeah, the business might be local, but you really want to think global. And the reason you want to think global is because we in Canada, we are considered an individualistic country, meaning we think of our own goals, our own achievements, our own accomplishments. But the new Canadians, top source immigrant countries right now coming into Canada are India, China, Pakistan, the Philippines, Korea, Syria. Those are our top source immigrant countries, probably where new realtors could make the biggest impact with knowledge, because they're all collectivists, meaning they're more family oriented, more community oriented. So why I say, yeah, realty might be local, but you want to think global, is a lot of those families will start to sponsor their families. Well, where are they going? They're collectivist, they're family oriented, community oriented. And so I remember hearing a story because I used to actually present at the Calgary Real Estate Board all the time, Alberta Real Estate Association. I've spoken at many realty conferences. I've done a lot of home development. And I remember one particular realtor, he was like 6'8", very white, very male. And yet he had mentioned how he had sold probably 20 to 30 homes within the same Indian family. So people don't mind. If anything, they actually like to work outside of their culture because the culture is so family oriented, community oriented. They don't necessarily want their own communities to know information about their finances. They don't want necessarily people knowing, what they're looking for in a home. So they're more than interested in working outside the culture. And I think that's a myth. Because often I think realtors think, oh, well, the Chinese are going to want to work with a Chinese realtor, and Indians are going to want to work with an Indian realtor, or someone from Uganda is going to want to work with Uganda. Unless language is the barrier, which can be mitigated with a translator, that's not even the case. And so when we look at our population, well, in Calgary, we're looking at 26% foreign born. So you're potentially losing opportunity with 26% of that population. So why wouldn't you want to increase your business by potentially 26%?
I think that's insight most people might not be aware of. And that's a bit of research, I mean, in this industry, for any entrepreneurs too, I mean, it's lifelong learning. And you can't just come into an industry and think because you passed a licensing course that you know everything you need to know. And so, would you have any advice for immigrants who are moving into the country and thinking, I'd like to get into real estate here? It looks on TV like it pays really well. I think I'll go get my license and start a
Yeah.
business. What about when it's on the other foot?
Sure. So the key piece that I hear that's hardest for new immigrants coming to Canada is networking. So we tend to be very well versed in networking. We'll go to a conference or a dinner and we talk about what, like I would call it the icebreakers, weather, traffic, sports, because that puts people at ease. It seems to be universal, but that's a myth. It's not universal. And it's very difficult for new immigrants, for immigrants that are coming from other countries wanting to be in real estate because they're so used to a much more deeper, authentic relationship where it's based on polychronic time. So polychronic is meaning that whoever's in front of you is more important than the potential appointment that you have scheduled in your calendar. Whereas we in North America are monochronic. So meaning I know what I needed to do at 9 a.m. I knew I had my podcast with you at 10:30 a.m. I know I'm doing another interview at 1:30. So that's a monochronic calendar. And so just understanding how business is done from your own home country and then understanding business here, understanding that difference in time. But it doesn't mean that you can't make a lot of headway with people within your own culture. That's great. And probably that's where you're going to start. But that doesn't mean that that's where you have to stop. You actually have great opportunity to build that if with just a little bit of awareness and education and knowledge. And I know that you kind of said like, yeah, you get your realty license and you're done. No, you're not. In fact, if anything, I find the more you learn, the less you know. So it's a continuous journey.
I agree with that 100%. And having been around the real estate industry for 20 years now, things are always changing. The relationships are changing, the dynamics, the rules. And so there's always something to learn. Now, a lot of the listeners will be students, and many will be realtors for this podcast and some entrepreneurs anyways. But if you think specifically, having spoken in real estate conferences, and I know you have a background in immigration, so you're well informed. What advice when you think of real estate, what would you offer to new realtors if you had anything to share?
I would say treat people as individuals first. Everyone is an individual. I'm a big believer of a lot of people follow the golden rule, which is treat people the way you wish to be treated. But when it comes actually to relationship building and in this new world, I would say it goes down to the platinum rule. Treat people the way they wish to be treated. Understand what certain cultures might be looking for in a house so that you can decrease your time when you're showing a home. So remember, a lot of those collectivist cultures, a lot of your Asians, South Asians, they're very, they're very family. I mentioned they're already family oriented. And when you have large families, large gatherings, so what are you going to focus on? You're going to focus on the kitchen. So, even narrowing down kitchens that have spice kitchens, sometimes they're called spice kitchens, which means you have that kitchen, but then you have a smaller kitchen in the back where all of the actual cooking is done. And then you have your grand kitchen. Master bedrooms, just due to inclusive language, that terminology, master bedroom, isn't used anymore. Plus, when we're looking at collectivists, well, they're probably going to have two main bedrooms because there's a big opportunity that, the grandparents or the parents are going to be living with the kids and probably doing a lot of the child rearing of those grandchildren. So, looking at homes in a different way. If you have Korean clients, well, Korean clients, in part of their culture, they'll eat a food called kimchi, which is served. It's a great ferment. A lot of the Asian cultures, South Asian cultures were eating the right foods way before, the North American culture, ginger, garlic, turmeric, kimchi, which is for fermented food. Like we all knew this way before. And so, looking at places where a lot of first generation, second generation Koreans would want a dimche, which is a kimchi fermenter. And so looking at homes where you would have either a developed basement or a gentleman's pantry where the dimche would go. So just even learning that terminology, like you don't have to put a ton of investment. A lot of people think, oh, if I put a lot of money, but it's really just knowledge. And when you start to use the right terms and you know what people are looking for, well, your name starts to spread as the realtor of choice. And that's, again, it goes down to that relationship building. So those are just some tips that I could offer new realtors, existing realtors in this space.
Yeah, those are great. Now, if someone wants to connect with you, where can they find you? Are you on social media? What's your website?
Yeah, so my website is tworksforyou.ca, and I do post a monthly blog, and they can also sign up for my newsletter from there where I put lots of juicy tidbits all the time. I'm also on Instagram under Tina Varughese, LinkedIn under Tina Varughese. I'm on Twitter, but not as much anymore. I think a lot of people are falling off that platform. And I'm also on Facebook under both personal Tina Varughese and my corporate, which is T-Works. So a lot of different places that I post at least 2 to 3 times a week to help people have the continuous conversations that we really need to be having to strive for a better tomorrow today.
Yeah, I so appreciate your time today. I know you're in between presentations as always. And really, if you're listening to this and you want to get some the inside scoop, connect with Tina and we'll put your name in the notes and let people know where they can find you. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you, Sue. You take care.
You too. And everyone listening, have a great day and we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye for now.